Welcome to Breaking the Lines Pod. I'm Arland.
My name is Akeem, and this is a Premier League podcast.
Welcome back. Welcome back. It's good to be done with this international break and good to be back with the Premier League. Akeem, how are you, man?
Man, I'm good. Happy to be back, bro. This international break was long, man. Just happy to be back to talk about some footy. One more before next year, but that one felt longer than usual.
Absolutely. I don't know about you, but I felt like Joe Willock in that maze during this international break.
I saw Eddie Howe talking about that, bro. I think that was hilarious, actually. Honestly, that's me every day trying to find Chelsea content or just stuff to relate to throughout whenever there's an international break, and I can never find stuff. I think TV is a bit more boring. Everyone can agree when it's international break.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, match week 8, let's jump right into it. Thank God that the Prem is back, and I think we get 3 match weeks before the next international break, so we should have some good content coming up. I know in the last pod, I'd stated that you did very well in the predictions, and I had to catch up. So I think I did a little bit better this time around.
Yes, sir. You definitely did, bro. I saw that. I checked a couple scores. Even my boy came over to me at one of my game, and he was like, "Mate, did you win the Chelsea game? Because I had 2-0 and you had 3." I was mad because Reece James was in my fantasy, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna take all the wins I could, bro.
absolutely. I remember you sent me a text and you said something about Reece James, and I looked into the fantasy and I was like, all right, fantasy for me this week, just log right out and I'm not checking it until next week. So um but I guess we'll jump into the Chelsea game and Nottingham Forest at home in what we now know was Ange's last game in charge. 3-0 victory for Chelsea.
Mr. Poglu, man.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I think I stated a couple times in the last few match weeks where, I was like, I feel bad for him. I feel bad for him. And to be honest, I mean, I think it is what it is, and I don't necessarily think that we will see him in the Prem again anytime soon. I think that the style of play that he has and his reluctance to adapt, I mean, I just don't see, anyone taking a chance on him, to be honest.
Yeah, but frankly, man, we've touched on a couple times. It serves Mr. Marinakis right, though, because I don't know what he was doing with Nuno. It only serves him right for that. So honestly, no hard feelings towards Ange, because I appreciate him giving me and Chelsea the points every time we faced him. So no hard feelings there. But yeah, I think that was the blind man could have seen that was kind of like a premature move, I would say,
Yeah.
after Nuno, especially after Nuno. The style you're coming from to try to switch to Ange mid-season was kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And I guess, looking at this game in particular, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I know Chelsea won 3-0, but I didn't necessarily think Forrest played that bad. I don't know if it's just me, but, it didn't seem like, I mean, obviously they lost 3-0 and whatnot, but, the first half I thought was decent from them. Obviously, 0-0 at halftime there. So I don't know. I personally was, watching the game and, just thinking to myself, all right, it's not looking bad per se. And then, second half came on and, Chelsea just kind of ran away with it. So I don't necessarily think, it was the worst game in that first half, but it went downhill from there.
It was one of those. I honestly agree with you. I don't think it was a 3-0 game. I mean, we can think about what I think Gibbs White, top of the box. They had at least two clear-cut chance. I'm not going to say they should have scored, but they didn't even get any of those, I don't think, on target. And it was even that Gibbs White at the top of the box, he was alone by himself. I think we made a mistake and played the ball straight to the middle of the field. I forgot what it was. But yeah, I agree with you. It wasn't a 3-0. Didn't feel like a 3-0 kind of game. But like I said, even when I texted you about Reece James, I was just more happy for fantasy and obviously to get the goals. But yeah, it was a very tight game in the first half. Obviously opened up with that a chimpong header in the second half and kind of created some space for us. But yeah, it was a very tight game. I didn't feel like at any time us Chelsea fan watching that game felt like it was 3-0. And not that 3-0 is, big crazy, but yeah, it didn't feel like a 3-0 game. And I felt like, obviously the missed chances from Forrest and stuff like that. So yeah, but for overall, it was a good game. I enjoyed it. I don't think that we deserve to lose either. I just don't know if it was a 3-0 game. I think in the second half, obviously, we were a lot better than the first half. Fixed things that we didn't do so well in the second half, made some changes and stuff like that. And yeah, first game back after international break, it was a little bit kind of flat. I didn't enjoy super over the top the performance or anything, but especially in the Premier League, and you know how it is so tight nowadays. The 3 points and a clean sheet is a massive thing. So yeah, it wasn't a I wouldn't go out there to say it was anything crazy about performance from Chelsea or anything. I just think it was a well good deserved win from them.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you, sort of with everything that you said. It was one of those games where, I think ultimately, I think, like you said, Chelsea definitely deserved to win it, just based off of the fact that, they were able to get 3 goals on the score sheet. And then I think, like you said, Forrest just, looked kind of not great. I don't know how else to really put it, to be honest. Maresca was in the stands for this one, so I think that was an interesting point we got to see there. And then Malo Gusto with the second yellow card. And I don't think I haven't heard much about this in terms of, I know we spoke about it earlier in the season, but Chelsea's red cards. I know that this was a second yellow, but I actually wanted to ask you about Malo Gusto, not necessarily in relation to the red card, but I've noticed that in the last couple games, he's been playing. Maresca's been playing him in that like sort of center mid position, moving into there. What are your thoughts on that?
If I could remember a good victory that we had, or a memorable victory, was the PSG games where Reece James played in midfield. So I think he's a big fan of Reece James and Malo. They're very technically sound players. So yeah, he's been trying that Malo out in the center mid position a lot. I think even the other day when we played, I believe we played Liverpool, and he started I think Malo and Reece, and I actually thought that Reece was going to be the one in midfield and Malo playing right back, but he's been trying Malo. And I mean, hey, he helps us. Like I said, he's very technical. So, you know, along with Pep, Enzo was one of those big box midfielder with the fullback kind of stepping into midfield converting. So I think for him to have a fullback, both of those fullback, which he deemed is, kind of perfect, technically sound, like I said, very silky on the ball, can make passes long and short, can switch a play, all of those stuff. So yeah, I think Malo offers him, and obviously, with the games coming thick and fast and rotation and stuff, we just had an issue with Enzo coming back a bit early from the international break. Caicedo, still, I don't believe he's fully fit. Obviously, we know our issues with Lavia, so I think it's him trying to find solution, which I'm not 100% mad at. Malo just going forward, needs to improve, obviously, but yeah, like a lot of players on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, when I've seen him in the center there, I've sort of thought to myself, he doesn't look bad there. He looks good. He adds a little bit of physicality, but also a little bit of ball playing too. So
Yeah.
interesting to see sort of, like you said, I think everyone sort of expects Reece James to be that person.
Hmm.
And him going to Malo, I think that was an interesting dynamic, but it looks good. It looks good. I'm excited to see sort of where Chelsea take this sort of run of decent results, and see how they progress in the league. And I guess that takes us on to the next round of games at 10 o'clock on Saturday. First one we'll jump into is the Brighton Newcastle game, and this was a game that stumped both you and I. I mean, I had this as a 2-2 draw, and I think you had it 3-2 in favor of Newcastle. Ended up 2-1 to Brighton. Welbeck with a brace, and Voldemont got one sort of as, well, I was gonna say consolation, but I guess not really. I mean, it was 1-1 when after he scored, so Welbeck winning the game for Brighton there at the end. I watched the extended highlights of this, and it looked like, I mean, there was chances on both sides.
Yeah, this was an open, entertaining game. I watched a bit of it. I mean, they're not open and entertaining, but I think there was chances for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I said this on the last pod in the predictions. I think the reason I went draw was just because I was like, I see Brighton scoring 2 for some reason, and I didn't see Newcastle only getting 1. I mean, I thought for sure they'd get 2 goals at least. So when I made that prediction, I thought that yours was more likely, but I guess Brighton coming away with the 3 points, and I think this is typical Brighton, right? I think they won in the last match week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 12 points for them so far this season.
Yeah, moving into 10th place on 12 points. I think great result for them. Obviously Newcastle is a decent side, so I think good, and I think Welbeck's gotten a few goals this season, so, the old man is still putting in his shift and still bagging some goals.
He's been important for them. He's been getting goals, like you said. He scored against us at the in that comeback game where they had against us. I think he scored the winner as well. So right for them. I'm happy for them. And also, like I said, this Fabian Hertzler, the youngest manager in the Prem. Football is changing. The long throws are back in, but still happy to see a young guy just thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. Newcastle side, I think, probably the only positive of this game is Voldemort gets another goal. So it seems like, he's adapting to life in the Prem, fairly well. But other
Hmm.
than that, I mean, I don't know. I can't really put any positives on a loss for Newcastle. I think, I think their goal is to chase sort of one of those Champions League spots, being in the Champions League this year themselves. So I don't think this is a great result towards that.
Is that still, would you say, I mean, I don't want this to be taken in anyway, but would you say that is still the goal, especially after what happened with them in the summer? Because I don't know. Is that the guy? Could be. Like I said, I'm kind of don't know if that's the goal. So I think I'm not gonna say that they should be happy or whatever, but I think with the context of what happened in the summer, I think where they're at is, I'm not gonna say happy, but I think it's fine if that makes sense.
I think you bring up a very good point. I think if they finished in a Europa League spot, they wouldn't be terribly upset. But there's still some investment there, right? I know you lost
Yeah.
Isak, but you brought in Voltamanta, you brought in Wisa, they brought in Elanga, so they've made some investment, and I think that. Looking at their team, I mean, do I think that they'll finish in a Champions League spot this year? Absolutely not. I think that, there's other teams that are way stronger than they are. But I think that for them, I mean, I think that that's a goal, right? They're in it this year. I think that they would like to return back and be in it next year as well. But I don't think that they would be terribly upset with the Europa League spot. I think that they definitely take that.
Yeah, that's a combo I'd love to have with any Newcastle fan because I mean I know you mentioned the names, right? Like we said, Wisa, I believe is in, Elanga came in. But Voltamade obviously is in the FPL and everyone is loving him right now. I just remember rumors around him in the summer, like, Bayern not wanting him. And like we
Hmm.
said, Newcastle went in for João Pedro, Liam Delap, Nicholas Jackson. They went in for a few different striker, like a TK. So just for the name off the top of my head, I believe Sesko was one of them as well. So that's five. So I think to get Voltamade, which has absolutely taken the league by surprise, no disrespect there. I think prior to that, I don't know if it was, obviously he's adapted to the league pretty quick as 8 games in right now as we're speaking. We don't know what will happen in the future. But I don't think it was something that they were putting their eggs in that basket. So yeah, that's like I said, I'd love to have the conversation with a Newcastle fan because I don't know. I think Elanga and Wissa would be kind of a bit tricky to hang your hat on to go for Champions League, but again, I could be wrong. So I don't know. I'd love to have the conversation to see. I know the investment's there, but after missing on what we would say is your top five strikers, and to go into which ultimately is a sixth or whatever number is after that, I don't know if it's something that they could, like I said, be upset about. So that's my context of looking at it. Also, I'm not a Newcastle fan, so I could be wrong. But good result for Brighton. Happy for what happened over the weekend. And yeah, this was kind of what, in my opinion, prior to, especially seeing the transfer window, what I kind of expected from Newcastle. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I I hear you, and I think that's a good point that you bring up because I don't think obviously the two strikers that they brought in after like you said failing on some targets. I think we saw coming in and Voltamata. I don't think that they were planning on playing with two strikers in the game, right? I think that they have in the past at times, but I don't think that that would have been sort of their main style of play. And that being said, I don't think that when these two purchases were made, I don't think that Voltamata was intended to be the starting striker from the beginning. I think that we saw obviously Premier League proven, got a decent amount of goals for Brentford in the past couple years. So I think he definitely would have gotten the nod over Voldemanda. I just think that Voldemanda's, performed somewhat decently, got some goals. So I think that it's going to be hard to take him out. But I agree with you. I don't think that, well, not that I don't think, but I think that it is, questionable. And I think that you do have the right to question it. Do you think that those two strikers are good enough to put you in the Champions League? And I think that's a valid question that, you can ask. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it develops for them.
Yeah, we most definitely will. Like I said, I'm not in Newcastle camp, so I don't know what the expectations are. A lot of people have opinions on. I could be wrong as well. But yeah, moving on to the next game. I was
Yeah.
happy for my guy, Uguchuku.
Yeah, I saw. It's crazy. I was looking at the results, and both you and I had Leeds taking this, the 3 points from Turf Moor, and Burnley with a 2-0 victory, proving us both wrong. A very important 3 points for them, and it's interesting enough because so far they've played now two of their fellow newly promoted sides, and they've beaten both of them. So 6 points they got there. They only have 7 points in total. So interesting dynamic there. Ugochukwu with the goal in the first half in the 18th, and then to Tachana. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, with a brilliant, I don't know if you got to see this, but a brilliant
Yeah,
strike.
what a strike, mate. That was absolutely filled. But yeah, I am happy for Burnley because, like you said, we both picked them to lose because Leeds been doing well. So we got to also give them massive credit for that because Leeds been kind of our team along with Sunderland, right? I mean, all of them, but them with Sunderland have been. Sunderland won this weekend as well, so they've been doing well.
Yeah.
Good result, like we said, good result for Burnley. I wasn't able to check out this game fully, so I don't have too much in terms of how the gameplay went. I was able to check out the goals and happy for my guy, like I said, Ukuchuku, and saw that brilliant strike in the 68th minute.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a little bit disappointing from Leeds side. I mean, I know in the last couple weeks, you and I have given them credit, even though maybe they haven't gotten the result, but they've played well. And they've created chances. I think especially in the Spurs game, we look back to that, and we both, kind of said that that's a promising sign for Leeds, the way that they played and whatnot. But I was watching back the extended highlights, and Leeds didn't really create too many chances to say that, hey, they should have went ahead here, went ahead there. I know that they controlled the possession, but it wasn't like some of the other games that we've seen them play. And there was some horrible defending on the first goal. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was a Kyle Walker cross in and brilliant cross, but just poor sort of defending. Ugochukwu got in between, I think, two of the center backs, and neither one of them are marking him, and he just slots it home. Um, but brilliant.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant 3 points for Burnley. They'll definitely take it, take whatever they can get down there.
I mean, like we said, in and amongst when you're playing, it's like the top six playing against each other. So when you're playing against team that's expected to be in and amongst those areas, they're both on. I mean, Burnley won, so it took them up to 7 points, and Leeds on 8. So it's almost like a 6 pointer for them. So it happens, like we said, especially for those promoted team. They were both in the championship last season, so those games are a little bit tighter than expected.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that moves us to what I think was probably the game of the weekend, which somehow, I don't know, I predicted 3-3 for the Palace Bournemouth game, and somehow ended up being 3-3. And the only reason I went 3-3 is because you went
Yeah.
2-2. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah,
but
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, wow, what a game this was, man. This game deserved it, though. I mean,
brilliant.
I'm
Yeah. Brilliant game, both teams. I mean, Mateta hat trick, Bournemouth got 3 goals. I think
Yo, Mateta missed a clear cut at the end there,
a
but we'll talk
sitter.
about that.
Yep.
A
Yeah.
sitter.
Brilliant game. I think both teams will take the point. I think, you mentioned the sitter at the end for Mateta. I think Palace would feel a little bit more hard done by with that chance at the end there to
Mm-hmm.
steal the 3 points. But brilliant game all around. One sort of thing, I don't know if you saw this in this game, but um, there was, I think it was in the second half, and then somewhere around the 70th minute, I think Sarr was through on goal, and they brought him down, and I think it was Senesi who brought him down, and ref went to the VAR monitor to check for a red card, and ended up deciding yellow. I thought that could have been a red card. I mean, he was clearly through on goal. I don't think that the defender, who was kind of level with him but on the other side, I don't think he was recovering. I thought that maybe Palace would feel a little bit hard done by there. I personally thought it was a red, but again, I can see why they didn't give it as a red, but I thought it definitely was a red for sure.
I honestly missed that. I was able to see like the goals and the other chances and stuff, but I missed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
missed it.
what a game for Mateta. I mean, I know we talked about that chance that he missed at the
Yeah,
end there, but hat trick coming off of making your debut for the French national team and getting a goal on international duty. I mean, life is just looking great for this guy. And I'll be honest with you, one of my favorite players in terms of like just entertainment, right? In the league, it's just entertaining watching him play. I mean, he's this big striker who, we don't see many strikers of his stature, right, in today's game, and he's good. He's effective. He's
physical.
physical. He scores goals. I just think he's a very entertaining player to watch.
Yeah, I love watching Mateta, man, for a couple of different reasons, like you're mentioning. But yeah, like you said, we don't have those kind of players in the league, and I think above all, for me, it's just like his journey, you know. I remember going through just even the other day, I saw the Premier League posted on Instagram, just like his arrival to Crystal Palace up until now, and obviously the little spat that went on with him and Zaha, that's now kind of like doing the circulation on Twitter and the social media and stuff. It's just like it's a good thing to see the growth of a player, you know, because you know how hard it is and how difficult it can be, especially in the Premier League, for him to be now one of the most prolific players. You have to give him the respect. There's a couple players. Mateta has that massive respect for me, but him and there's another player, your defender, Gabriel, because I don't remember Mateta as much, but I remember Gabriel when he first came in the league, you know, and it's like, it's very hard to change perception, you know how that is,
Yeah.
like, especially for a striker and stuff like that. So I think you have to give it to them, you know. So yeah, Mateta, I'm happy to see him growing. Obviously, I'm happy to see him in the France, like you said, national team scoring on international break, but not just like in France team because, you know, he had like a decent season, but because he actually deserves to be there. So yeah, I'm happy for him, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you bring up the Gabrielle thing, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I was actually talking to my dad the other day, and he was mentioning sort of his revival. And like you said, I think changing the perception of you as a player in football, I think is probably one of the most, if not the most difficult thing to do. And I think a lot of people forget that when Gabriel came in, I mean, he was not the Gabriel that we see today. He was making mistakes here and there, and maybe that's kind of attributed to where Arsenal was at the time, but definitely difficult to change that perception. I think he's done it. And like you said, I think Mateta, I mean, I know he's towards, maybe the second half of his career, but the way that he's playing now, I think is just outstanding.
Yeah.
And I love watching Palace for that reason.
I mean, second part, third part, fifth part of your career doesn't really matter, you know, because like we just said, you and I both know there's a lot of defenders we can sit here and talk about, like, yeah, maybe it was for where Arsenal was at the time, or yeah, for where Palace was at the time for Mateta. But like we said, we can sit here. I know we can mention real players, name off a couple players that just didn't make it. So for those players, like I said, you just have to give the credit where credit's due, because it's especially in the Premier League, it's not an easy thing to kind of change what that perception of you. And sometimes you and I both know, like, you know, it's very easy to like our players and we support our players, especially our clubs and stuff. So we kind of know our players ins and out. And you go on social media and it's another thing, and you know, and then the rest of the league just kind of see your players at that. So I think both of them is credit where it's due.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of moves us to the City Everton game, which is
Yes, sir. Captain Fantastic.
absolutely Air Holland.
Is he your captain as well?
No, I didn't bring him in for this. I didn't bring him in this match week, but I brought him in for next one. But another two goals. The first goal was a brilliant header. I mean, just trademark Holland. And I'm kind of watching the highlights of this game, and I'm just thinking to myself, he's got to be the best header of the ball, the best finisher of the ball. I mean, you give this guy a chance in the 18-yard box, and most of the
Yeah.
time it's going to result in a goal. I mean, just insane form for him. I think, City's very, very fortunate to have a forward like that because it's very hard to find them. Not many of them out there.
He's one of a kind, man. Like he's just special. The guy is one of one. Like Yeah, he's just different breed, man. Different breed, be honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. 2-0 victory for City. I think obviously I think it's a fair result. Like we said, the first Holland goal was a brilliant header. The second Holland goal, I think, was a goalkeeping mistake. I don't know if you got to see it, but it just kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah. I was able to see both.
yeah, it kind of went through Pickford's hands. And I know that I think it went through a defender, but I still think that's a save that, you would expect to make. And I think Pickford himself would kind of be disappointed in himself with that. But, I don't necessarily think that Everton created much. I think they had a couple of flurries in the second half where they were moving forward a bit, but nothing
Didn't
crazy.
offer enough. Yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't offer anything to kind of like break the City down. And even a crazy stat I seen the other day, Holland's the only City player to score for City in October so far.
Wow.
Yeah, so it just shows you how back he is this season. But I felt like it's a different Holland. I mean, we were saying last season he wasn't on it, but his regular season last season, or his off season, as we would say, probably a top season. But yeah, he's just showing this season that he's right back to the top of his game.
Absolutely. And one other thing I actually had here in my notes for this game was I think Foden played well. It looked like he was kind of pulling the strings there in that center of the park. So I think that's a plus for City. Definitely getting him back to top form. And I think you'd mentioned this in the last couple weeks. You were kind of impressed with him, and I just had that in my notes that the way he played good. I know for that second goal, he played the ball down the line. Was it the second goal or first goal? I'm not sure, but he played the ball down the line on the left side to O'Reilly, and O'Reilly crossed it in. So
Yeah.
I think, I think, City's looking like they're getting better week by week. I know that I was reading some analysis of this performance, and people were saying they weren't too impressed, but I think 3 points is what matters, and that obviously takes him into second place with 16 points. So kind of really all that they care about is getting those 3 points.
I think people are always going to have their issue. For me, is for us, one of the big things this season was Chelsea and Liverpool, and not even Liverpool, but just Chelsea could be an outside force along with obviously City. I would say because City has made some changes and defensively, we all don't think they're as strong as they used to be. I think it's easy to kind of say that. I think what City is doing is actually a little bit kind of, if we don't keep an eye out, really, they might, flow right back into that City. Because you remember that season where they started a little bit slow and then they went on a run of like 20 games or something. I forgot what it was, a specific number, but that's what Pep is, and that's what City has up their line. The only thing I think we all, for the rest of the league, can be a little bit okay with is that their defense is a bit shaky. But I think if they get going, as we've seen with Holland and those attacking players, it could be an interesting season, I would say. I won't be, I don't think it's City, treble winning City, but I think they could cause some problems and get into that conversation up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back a little bit on Holland, he could have had a hat trick. I mean, he could have had 4 goals. He had a couple chances at the end there where I was kind of shocked to see him blunder them. And I don't know if it was kind of fatigue or what, because it was really late. I mean, I think it was in 90 plus whatever, but he could have had more. So I definitely saw that, and I was like, 100% bringing him into the fantasy team. Whatever I got to do, I don't care. He's getting the goals. He's getting the points.
Did you have Salah or who did you have? Who do you have? You have Saka?
No, I got rid of Chelsea striker João Pedro, and I think I had,
Yeah, mate.
maybe like 7 million in the bank or something. So I was able to get him in. But, obviously good result for City. I hope that they do well enough where Holland gets goals, but I hope that they don't do well enough where, they start competing for the title. So
For the title.
yeah. Okay. I guess we can move into the next game. Sunderland Wolves, a 2-0 victory for Sunderland. I think both you and I had Sunderland winning this from our
Did I? I
predictions.
think I think I went for Wolves to go with. I think I had a 2-1. Let me just go and double check. I think I had 2-1.
I think you had 2-1 for Sunderland if I wrote it down correctly.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I did have 2-1
Yeah.
for Sunderland. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, closest one, I guess.
Yeah, it was I actually watched this game all the way throughout, and I thought Sunderland played well, but I also thought that Wolves played well too. I didn't think that they were as poor as maybe the scoreline reflects, or even kind of the season went through,
Mm-hmm.
or has gone by. I think that they played well. They struggled to put the ball in the back of the net, but It wasn't like,
Yeah.
watching Wolves in the past few games this season where, they lack everything, right? I thought that, there were some
Yeah,
promising signs there.
how did Strad Lawson look in this game? Because he's been, I mean, he's not, we aren't going to say he was, a prolific goal scorer, but I just expected a bit more from him this season to kick on a bit, second season with the team, kind of just push on from what he was doing last season.
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that because I was watching the game and I was watching him in particular, and um, I just couldn't help but think that he's gonna struggle because Wolves is gonna struggle. Because I don't necessarily see him being one that will create for himself. I think
Yeah,
I think you have to create for him most of the time, and I think Wolves is struggling to do that. So, I think that, he kind of in turn will struggle as well, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see sort of how they bounce back. They're sitting in last place on 2 points. Um, they're gonna have to start getting points, like, immediately if they wanna turn the season around, otherwise they're gone, and in my personal opinion, I think that they are done. I mean, I know it's 8 games in the season, but I don't see them, you know, turning around and getting, you know, 30, what is it? Like, 38 points, where they say the magic number is 30 something, so I don't see them getting 30 something points, the rest of the season, averaging a point a game. I just don't see it.
yeah, I think it's gonna be tough for them. But football is crazy. I don't know as yet, but yeah, it has been a tough start. And all those teams on the bottom, West Ham, all of them is gonna have a very difficult season if they don't pick it up. What I would say is, I've seen crazier things in football, so that's why I'm not so ready to call it as yet on my side. But I do think that all of those teams are gonna struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that moves us into Craven Cottage, Fulham, Arsenal. Arsenal with the 1-0 victory. I good 3 points to them. Trossard with the goal. I don't know if you saw any of this game, but I think Arsenal looked solid. Fulham didn't have a shot on targets. That kind of tells the story in and of itself. It's one thing I found interesting in this game was it's become a theme where Trossard is getting the nod over Martinelli in the league at least. So I think that's interesting to see sort of that dynamic that Arteta has with Trossard and Calafiori being paired on that left side. But I thought overall, solid controlling performance by Arsenal. Not much to really say. There was a penalty overturned that was given to Saka, which I struggle to see how it's not a penalty.
So what was the official call on that? Because obviously I missed the game.
Yeah, so the referee on the field called the penalty, and my
Mm-hmm.
initial reaction watching it live was that it could possibly be outside the box. And VAR starts reviewing, and they start showing us the different angles on the TV, and the angle confirms that it's in the box, right? And then they start talking about how I think Kevin was the Fulham defender, and how he got a touch on the ball, which he did get a very slight touch on the ball, but he gets the
Mm-hmm.
touch after he makes contact with Saka's knee to bring him down. So my initial thought or overall thought is, I mean, you can win the ball and then you could go through the player afterwards as long as it's not reckless and it not be a foul. But if you go through the player first to win the ball, it's a foul, right? It's like anywhere else on the field, if you have to impede the player to win the ball, it's a foul, and that's essentially what this was. Thankfully Arsenal won the game 1-0. I just, I struggle to see how, you know, I think there has to be some transparency between the referee organization and everyone else, the teams, the fans and everything. And there has to be something where you come out and you say, listen, you know, if it's this, then it's a penalty, or if it's this, then it's not a penalty. Because we see the one with Gyökeres against Newcastle, and I know it's a big talking point, but I think you and I both felt that it was a penalty. And then you see this one, and it's like there's no real sort of acknowledgement by the PGMO, or there's no explanation as to why, right? Because you can give an explanation, but then you should be able to question the explanation and say, okay, but he gets a touch after he brings Saka down, essentially. So what does that change? You know what I mean? I think it was a penalty. I think just looking around most of social media, I think that people agreed, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know to kind of what to say about it.
Yeah, I can see both sides for sure. I'm not picking any side at all. I think the one thing I will say is I agree with you in terms of there's not a consistent call in the Premier League, and I think that's our biggest problem. Like we went from the Robert Sanchez to I forgot what happened the week after that. So I think it was it your game with the Victor
Yep, yep, yeah.
to the inconsistency. So I think that's the main problem with everyone in the Prem, right? You're never going to see it's just not consistent enough. The only thing I will say to kind of defend those refs or whatever I saw in that clip when I seen it was I have seen not just this season, but I think when we were coming up, I don't know if they've altered the rules, but in the past, I would say 3 seasons, I realized like running into the guy doesn't get you an automatic foul. That's what I realized. I don't know if you've taken that away because I've seen, obviously, I support Chelsea. We have Caicedo, but I've seen some rash challenge, not just from Caicedo, but I've just seen some rash challenge where, for instance, they go to try to win the ball and the intention is to win the ball, but they'll like miss and hit a player or something of the case. And if it's in the box, obviously, I believe that should be a penalty. But I've seen it on the pitch of where the intention was nowhere near to hit the guy, but the guy was just quicker or something like that, and he might have bumped the guy or whatever. But it's nothing enough to kind of just stop the play. But it's enough to, if you want to make a deal of it, you could. And I've seen them let stuff like that go. But like I said, I'm not defending the refs. I can only say I do see them trying to add physicality, I would say, based on, especially in our early when I would say probably like 2019 to like, anywhere from 20 whatever to 19 to 21 or whatever. I feel like you remember Hazard days. I think, he dropped his shoulder a couple times and someone would just kind of kick his shin and it's a foul. And I remember those days, but I think it's a little bit, I think now what I will say, because I even see it in the Champions League sometimes, is that they're kind of looking, which makes sense, because there's a lot of to get diving out, I think they're kind of looking for that contact where they can kind of say for sure it impeded that player. Because sometimes you and I both know. I think on that he did make a contact with Saka's leg, and I do agree with you. But I think what I would say is also I don't know how heavy the contact was, and I agree. I know what the point is going to get it to. Oh yeah, what's a foul should be a foul. I get that. You and I both play, and you know how I used to make a meal of all my fouls. So I used to feel like if you're still giving them that gray line of every hit is a foul, a player like myself for sure, if I get that hit Saka did, I would be flipping. But at the same time, is it enough to get me flipping? Like, you know what I mean? Or so I don't know. That's kind of where I stand with that. But I agree with you. There's not enough consistent call in the Prem, so there's always going to be questions.
And that's an interesting point that you bring up because I actually it's something that has, drove me crazy in the past. And we went through this period of time in football where, a touch would have, if we slowed it down on the VAR and we saw that there was a touch on the player, we would have called it a penalty. And there's been times where, like you said, you and I both know that touch is not enough to bring back down the player, right? So I think that, I like the game going into the direction of, well, the touch has to be enough to bring you down, right? Like it's not just I tapped your ankle and you fell down and it's a penalty, Obviously, I think that drives everyone crazy, right? And I agree with you. I think that it has to be, and I think that the league is moving towards this where it has to be deemed where it's enough. I think the only problem that with that is, now it's like it's the referee's interpretation of is it enough contact to bring the person down? And,
Yeah,
different referees, different
it's going
refereeing
to be a different
styles,
issue.
different games, and it's going to be different every time. So,
The
how
Rob
do,
Sanchez and the Victor one
yeah,
is the same, is a perfect example.
exactly. So, how do you fix that? I don't necessarily know. I think that if we just have a little bit more clarity in terms of, I don't want to see analysts and pundits coming out. I want to see, the referee organization come out, not just this game, right? But even the Crystal Palace game and come out and say why exactly they didn't give the red card to Senese when he could be deemed being the last man. I'd like to see that those explanations come out, maybe from the Premier League themselves, right? The referee felt this, and this. That way we can have some more clarity, right? And I think that, we'd understand sort of the referees a little bit more in terms of their decision making. But Yeah, I think that's sort of all I had from the Arsenal game, and I didn't really want it to be about the penalty too much, because I thought that they put on a dominant performance. Didn't create a whole ton of chances. They did create some, but I think the most important thing was the 3 points from a team that took, I think, 4 points off us, or maybe even
Yeah,
6 points off us last year.
especially last season. Yeah, I remember that you guys lost there, what, 2-1?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Arsenal looks a lot more solid this season. I mean, there's a lot of criticism about the Stoke and stuff because I know we talked off air about this, but yeah, I think Arsenal, not Arsenal, but Arteta is trying to go for a title. So we'll see how that goes. For me, right now, there's no criticism, but yeah, Arsenal looks, I mean, they're steady right now. I mean, I personally believe and I hope that it doesn't happen, but they're steady on pace to beat that Chelsea 15 goals conceded, and well, not to beat it, but to either match it or similar around that ballpark. And I hope that that doesn't happen for our sake because I feel like that is difficult in nowadays game. I honestly think that's one of the hardest stats to ever. But if Arsenal is able to, and I think if any team that I've seen in the recent years that could, it's Arsenal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that any team that we both have seen, this team looks like it's the most likely, but how insane is that stat, man? I mean, I was thinking about it and,
Uh,
that we've conceded 3 goals in the league so far, 1 to Liverpool, 1 to City, and 1 to Newcastle. And I was just thinking about this, conceding 15 goals in a whole season. I mean,
38 games.
absolutely insane stat.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Like I said, that's one stat. I think the goal scoring, 'cause I think players will just gradually improve as we play. And that's what it gets me. Because like we said, we both, what did we predict the Crystal Palace? And you kind of just went 3-3 because I went 2-2 and I was, feeling both teams kind of having a good, but 3 goals, 6 goals in one game. Do you know what I mean? Like the quality on
yep.
both teams to score 6 goals in one game. And as we've seen in the Prem today, not even the Prem, but Champions League recently, teams are scoring for fun. So yeah, man, I think it's an incredible stat. But yeah, like I said, I hope it lasts beyond this season.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Definitely going to be interesting for sure. That moves us to Sunday and 2 games on Sunday, 2 very, I'd say, very interesting games. Obviously, we'll go with Spurs Villa first. And actually, this was one of the ones that I predicted spot on 2-1 for Villa. And I actually turned on this game as soon as Bentancur had scored. And after Spurs had scored, I thought that it was sort of Villa that controlled the game. Rodgers with a brilliant strike in the 37th minute. And then obviously Buendia with another, I would say, sort of long range strike, right? Kind of top of the box. 2-1 victory for Villa and Spurs were flying high sort of before this. And this was kind of something that I thought, kind of brought them back down to earth. Just a little Spursy, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was a day. It was a day for the away teams in the league, and I mean, you and I think from both results are both happy, right? We never want to see Tottenham win, and then I know you're going for obviously title with Liverpool, your closest candidate at the moment in game week 8. So I think it was a great weekend for you. Closest rival, your other closest rival in terms of the table. So yeah, I think I was happy to see it. I watched Spurs. I think Spurs is, in my opinion, this is the kind of, like I said, kind of similar to Newcastle when Spurs brought Frank in. I thought Frank was a top manager, and we've given them the praise of them playing some good football so far at the start of this season. But I've always felt like not just Frank, but Spurs itself in general is kind of going to be, especially with the transfer window, a bit of up and down. They got a good team, but still some missing pieces. So yeah, I think it would kind of be a season as they've been showing, some week good and some week kind of bad. So yeah, it wasn't anything too surprising, I guess, on my part. I was just more happy for it. Not necessarily even happy because I had Van de Ven that I'd never seen a guy got 0 points on fantasy league. And I also had Kudus, but yeah, so Van de Ven and Kudus, but I mean, besides the fantasy part, I was happy for Villa. Like you said, that's their fifth win in a row, I believe. In all comp. So they've been picking up some points, especially after that slow start. So you just kind of to go back again on those West Ham and Wolves, like you never really know, because a couple weeks ago we were talking about how worrying it was for Villa. I still think it can be, but like they've shown in the past couple games, they're picking it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're sitting in 11th on 12 points, so I think that this was, 3 points that they needed for sure. just to kind of stay close to that target area that they're looking for. And obviously it's still early and whatnot, but they definitely have turned it around. I mean, they're like you said, their start to the season was a little slow, and they seem to have just picked it up out of nowhere, really. I don't think that I don't want to necessarily say that I wasn't expecting it, but I just didn't see it happening in terms of, them just going on a run of like you said, I think 5 games in all competitions, 4 or 5 games where straight wins. So interesting to see that.
I think we have to remember also, I mean, I know they lost some players, so I'm not gonna, but they were, they were a Champions League team last season. So Unai, it didn't work out too much at Arsenal, but he's been doing a fantastic job. So in terms of kind of like Bournemouth, I'm not expecting them to, challenge, but I still expect them to be a solid kind of Bournemouth team, Crystal Palace, kind of one of those team, if that made sense.
Yeah,
So it was a little bit surprising to me to start.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that kind of takes us off to Anfield, where it was definitely a game. I watched this game. It was interesting to see sort of how the game played out, and I was very interested to see how United, more so than Liverpool, set up and dealt with this game. Just because I think you and I have discussed this in the past, where United just kind of lacks sort of that drive and that hunger in games, and I thought that in this game they absolutely had it. I mean, there was no issue with that at all. And Buemo with a brilliant goal, good finish early on this in the second minute, I think it was, in this game. And then, Liverpool made it 1-1 late in the second half, and Maguire shortly after put the ball in the back of the net off of a cross. So I think brilliant win for United. I mean, this win puts them 2 points behind Liverpool. So, you know, you're 9 games in. I think if you kind of would have told United fans you'd be 2 points behind Liverpool 9 games in, who are title challengers, they would have definitely taken that, right? I think obviously their season sort of didn't start well, so there was a lot of controversy and a lot of criticism, which was, deservedly sent out to them. But I think that they've kind of, in the last couple weeks, they've performed better. So interesting to see where they take that. I thought um, Liverpool defensively, I think there's a big question mark there. I mean, on that first goal, Van Dijk steps out of position and Konate has to come over and cover for him, which he can't get there in time. And then, marking on the second goal, just something that Liverpool, I think, have struggled with this season is crosses into the box. So interesting to see 4 losses in a row for Liverpool. Not a great run of games for them.
Not at all. I think, like you said, it's been interesting to watch. From the header itself to foul McAllister in the build up, in the header there that we try to win, just to even drop him back and Buemo that goal. I think it was a bit, I wouldn't say it was just the kind of the defending Liverpool's been doing this start of the season, like we said, a little bit shaky. I think the fullbacks is like we've said repeatedly on this show, there's questions there, and once you can get it on the side, then it's a bit tricky, because it's easy to go down the side and you pretty much have just the two center backs inside. And if you can beat one, like we just said with Van Dijk sometimes, especially with the start of the season, not that it's ever been a question over his head, because I think it's been, elite since he's signed for Liverpool, prior signing to a couple seasons signing to Liverpool. But I think recently, obviously, there's been question mark over his defending and stuff that he's doing. So yeah, I think it's a little bit worrying for Liverpool, but also something I wouldn't say expected from me, because I mean they had a tremendous, what we would think from the outside, a tremendous summer, coming in, until we saw, like we said, the fullbacks, and obviously Akim's in right now. Ekitike looks a better signing than Isak, but obviously with time things can change and stuff. But I think it's something that is not expected in terms of their signing, but it's almost expected because you and I have been watching the league for a long time, that even Pep doing the three-peat, that's why he gets the credit he gets, because I think everyone in the Premier League, since I've been watching it, is very good at adapting, obviously it's the highest level, but I think most managers in the league are very good at adapting. It being Slots first season, it was almost kind of like a free hit. I wouldn't say a free hit because he did a phenomenal job, but almost a free hit, and him coming in with his new ideas and just had to tweak some stuff on that team. It was a little bit, I would say, teams weren't expecting. I think even myself, I remember on the Chelsea part, I didn't think Chelsea was ever going to win the league, but I thought that Slot and Liverpool will fall off at some point throughout the season. That was my honest take on Liverpool. So I think it happening this season is not surprising. Like we said, like I just said, it's a Premier League, so it's interesting to see, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can deal and cope with it. Because right now, if we're going off of on the start of the season, it's looked a bit shaky, and I feel like everyone is kind of from that Crystal Palace game a lot also figured a way out to play against Liverpool. So it will be interesting. It will be interesting to see how they cope.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to see what they do this weekend. I think obviously losing 4 games in a row, is not the form of any title winning teams. But like you said, I mean, it's still early on. They're on 15 points right now, so I think that's what 4 points behind Arsenal in first. So not a huge gap, right? But just interesting to see how they cope from this, right? How they recover. Obviously, they have the Champions League in the midweek. Which we kind of already know what's gone on there, but the league is a different animal and a different beast, right? I think we see that with a lot of the teams dropping points to teams that you wouldn't necessarily think that they would drop points to. So interesting to see how Slot kind of manages this. I mean, I personally think that looking at that Liverpool team, I think that one of the mistakes that Slot made in recent weeks is as soon as Isak became available, benching Ekatike for him. And I think just Ekatike being on this sort of brilliant run of games and form and goal scoring form, I think that was a mistake that he made. I mean, I know Isak is your marquee signing, 100 and however much million they spent on him, but I just don't think that you can take out a guy that's been, firing on all cylinders like that. So he definitely has some work to do, Slot for sure. I think, most important thing for him should be trying to figure out ways to, shore that defense up. And I think that, he has a bit of a headache going forward too, right? I think Salah kind of so far underperforming this season, the whole Ekatike Isak thing, and then trying to get, the best out of Wirtz or get just anything out of him, I think is a big task for him. So we'll see kind of how he copes with that and how he deals with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he needs to focus a bit more. Like we said, I think we said it. Was he? I don't know if he was suspended, but we talked about the game the other day where Kitike missed, and I also said that he was a big miss for them. So I think that there's a few things that he has to figure out. The second season, the pressure is on. You and I were talking off air, and you said it. I think that was also perfect. Winning the title last season. Now, the pressure is on. Not necessarily the pressure is on, but they're getting figured out. So he's gonna have to come with remedies to fix that, and that's what makes it. That's why they get the big bucks at the end of the day. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll be here, obviously. I'm sure you will be, as you will be keeping an eye out as an Arsenal fan, and me as a Chelsea fan. I'll just be there for sure because it's be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that takes us into the last game of the match week, Monday game. West Ham Brentford. West Ham at home hosting Brentford, 2-0 loss for them. And I think that
Sam does not deserve a thing, my brother. Nothing.
not a single thing. And to add to that, I will say I think this is the least athletic team I've ever seen play in the Premier League. I mean, they
Premier League.
they can't run. They have no physicality about them. I look at this West Ham team and I struggle to kind of comprehend how you can let a team get to this point. I mean, absolutely
I think
atrocious team, in my opinion. Honestly, obviously Wolves is sitting on 2 points and West Ham is sitting on 4 points, but I think West Ham is the worst team in the league by far.
it's so. I was literally just about to say that I think this is the one team that I'm ready in 8 weeks. I mean, 8 matches to hang my hat on that they're going down. 100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll be here at the end of the season to eat my words if not. But I 100% believe that West Ham will be going down. Because like you said, there's just so many factors wrong with that team. unathletic. In that way, I don't think that's ever fine in the Prem. But if it's gonna work in the Prem, then you have to have in the technicality to kind of like win games, and they just don't have anything to kind of win games. I don't see goals. I don't see them stopping goals. I don't see them creating goals. I don't see them holding the ball. I don't see anything that that team offers that another team in the Premier League cannot offer. You know what I mean? So it's just, I think it's going to be a very, very long and hard season for West Ham. And yeah, they might find themselves in the championship next season.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, I not to beat a dead horse, but I just can't see them improving in any way, shape, or form. I mean, all areas
I
of the
know,
pitch.
I know Nuno is new, but it's just even when you think about Brentford, sold majority of their top players in the summer, and the coach is new. So I know Nuno just got there, but I think it's not. I'm not necessarily putting it on Nuno. I think it's just the structure of how that team is set up for this season. Like you just said, I don't know if it's ready to compete in the Premier League.
I would even go as far as to say is I don't know if they could compete in the championship either. I mean, that's an even more physical league than this league is.
And you have better players and you can keep the ball and,
Yeah.
and find goals anyway. But yeah, it's gonna be a long season for West Ham, man. 4 points after 8 weeks, and like I said, I know we know Wolves has two, but I'm sure that Wolves is gonna finish on more points. I don't know if they're staying up or not, but I think Wolves will have more points than West Ham come the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that's a hill that I'd be prepared to die on with you for sure. Well, that kind of concludes match week 8, our first match week back. Thank God. I think you and I both were looking forward to this and needed this.
A good match week for us, obviously. I started the weekend off. I was able to watch my game with Chelsea, and then also, like I told you, just missing. I missed the deadline for my FPL, but at the end, it ended up working out for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have some work to put in honestly on FPL after this week. It was a pretty poor week for me.
It's like that's up and down. I think like I felt like that a couple weeks back because that people I feel ahead of us, but sometimes I think it's like that. I remember my friend made forgot what his actual team name is, but the dude had Achimpong in his team, bro. Come on, bro. You and I, we never gonna put like. Come on, bro. 18 points. I think he left the game with. Like, bro, come on. Who's sitting there thinking I'm gonna put Josh Achimpong in my team for this weekend, bro? Like
And you know
that
what's
makes
crazy is there's always one of those. Every week there's one of those.
that is so you see when I see those, I'm like, yeah, you can have it, mate. Like you clearly can have it because I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll never sit there for 38 games and said I'm gonna put not that I don't rate him, but you know what I mean? It's a youngster coming through and all that. I'm not gonna put him in my team, and then I see like you see all the crazy triple captains and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just insane. But let's get into match week number 9 predictions.
Absolutely. First up, Leeds West Ham. I know we just talked about West Ham in that game, that
6-0
last game.
leads.
Is that your final answer?
Man, I think this one is I'm gonna go 2-0 leads to this one. I already know my answer for that.
2-0 Leeds. All right. I'm gonna go 2-1. I'm gonna give West Ham a goal. I'm gonna give West Ham a goal. I'll go 2-1 for Leeds. See how that one pans out. Next up, Chelsea Sunderland. Where are you going on this one?
Home game for Chelsea. I'm gonna go. I think it can be tight, but I'm gonna go 2-0 again, Chelsea.
And I think I'm gonna copy that because that's exactly what I was gonna say. I think that seems like a fairly good result. I think Chelsea will have a good
Might get a
performance.
goal in. Yeah, might get a goal and Sunderland has to push and we'll get that second goal. But yeah, I'm gonna go 2-0 Chelsea.
Next up, Newcastle Fulham. Interesting game. I'm gonna go Newcastle win this game, and I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go 2-0 here as well.
I'm gonna go 2-1. I was gonna go 2-0, but I'm giving Fulham a goal. They gotta get a goal this weekend. I mean, yeah, they have to.
All right. I actually like that. I think it's a good one. This is a difficult one. Man United Brighton. What are you thinking?
Not put my hat on Ruben winning 3 games in a row. 2-1 Brighton.
2-1 Brighton. All right. I'm gonna go other way. I'm gonna go 3-1 United.
Long throws versus the long throw undid Liverpool versus Palace, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, Brentford, Liverpool, That would be interesting, and it's away.
Long throws versus one of the newly inaugurated sides into set piece FC. I don't know if you saw, but Liverpool scored 2 goals off corners today in the
I
Champions League.
I
So
didn't see that. I didn't see. I missed it. I thought
um,
you were gonna say to make sure that you let them know you're gonna rotate before you.
we'll see if Keith Andrews gives Slot his lineup 48 hours
It's
before the
48
game.
hours. 48 hours ahead. Let him know you're gonna play differently, mate.
I'm gonna go for Liverpool victory here. I think I think Brentford will give them a game, but I think Liverpool will just be too much for them, and I think they'll get back to winning ways. Um, I'm gonna go 3-1 for Liverpool.
Okay. I'm gonna go. It's a good score. I'll go 2-0 Liverpool.
All right, all right. Next up, Bournemouth, Nottingham
Big
Forest.
Sam.
The Don is
Welcome, Mr.
back.
Dyche. Yeah, he is back, mate. Skinny jeans, flare jeans, skinny jeans.
uh,
So I'm gonna go, but his first game back, I think he's gonna make it very, very difficult. I'm gonna go 0-0 on this one.
that's a good one. I don't think we've predicted a 0-0 yet.
Yeah, but with Mr. Dyche,
That's a very, very good one. I'm gonna go 2-1 Bournemouth. I think Semenyo has to give me something this weekend.
yeah, Semenyo needs to.
After last week, definitely has to give me something. Although he didn't get the assist for it, but he had a good run down the side where he crossed it in and it bounced back and
And
they got the goal. But
hey, 4 points better than a guy that played and got 0 points, mate.
Mickey, next up, Arsenal Palace. Interesting game. I think it'll be a good game. Arsenal home. So I'm gonna go 3-0, which I think could be a
Yeah,
stretch possibly. But I think just going off
yeah,
of that home victory over at Atletico, I think Arsenal
that's
will
true.
get some rhythm going and have some confidence from that. So I'm gonna go 3-0.
That's true. That's true. I don't know if I can go three. I want to go 3-0, and you made a great point about Atletico because I forgot. But I just don't see Glasner allowing you guys that much space, mate. I play them, and trust me, 11 and sometimes 12 players in the box.
Uh, you know,
Mate, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna go the same thing, mate. I know it's at the Emirates, so I cannot go. I think the Emirates will help if you score a goal, so I'm gonna go 2-0.
all right.
But I would not be stout if it goes 1-0 or something scraping like that, mate. Because I know Glasner, mate. He doesn't give you space. I played that team so many times. They don't give you any space in the back five, bro. You cannot.
It's funny you say 12 men because I think he was a center back himself, so he might lace up the boots himself for that one too. I think big game next one that we're gonna go into is Villa City. I think this is a good test for City given Villa's recent form. What are you thinking on
Yeah.
this?
I think it'll be, yeah, you're right. Because, I mean, City did lose to Brighton, so we can't sit here and act like City is unbeatable. So, should be a good game. It's at home it's at Villa, so I need Haaland to score me some goal. I'm gonna go 3-1 Man City.
All right. Um, I'm stuck between a 2-2 and a 3-2 for City. I think I'm gonna go 3-2 for City.
City do like to concede goals, and they're gonna concede goals this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Villa kind of, showing us some form and what they just did to Spurs. I think I feel comfortable saying that they'll get a couple goals in that game for sure. Um
Yeah.
Next up, Wolves Burnley, one that's might be impossible to call. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Wolves need to get some points. Burnley just surprised us, so we counted it. We went against them. I'm not gonna go against them again. But Wolves is at home. Like you cannot be bad at home, mate. Like you need the points. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go. Let's go for a draw. 1-1.
All right.
Don't know where to call this.
I'm actually gonna give Wolves their first victory of their season here. I'm gonna go,
Wouldn't be a bad result.
yeah, put them above West Ham and obviously taking West Ham down to their deserved spot in the league so far.
Yeah, the Hill Dickinson Stadium, mate.
Yes, sir. Back at the Hill
I hope they
Dickinson.
win though.
Yeah.
I hope they win though. I honestly hope they win. I hope they keep sinking Spurs. So hope and what I believe is going to happen, I do think they can beat Spurs. They've been solid, and Grealish is going to be available for this game, unlike the last game where I had him in my lineup. And tell me how I switched. I had Grealish in my lineup, and then there's Konsa on the bench. and Esteve as my defender, bro. Konsa had 2 points, Esteve had 8 points, and tell me which one fantasy put in two
Well,
points.
well, then you somehow still did better than I did by far.
Yeah,
Um,
that's I feel you on that. So I guess perspective is a mad thing.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, Spurs. I'm going 2-1 Everton
2-1
for the
Everton.
upset. Not even an upset. I think Everton is playing good and defensively sound. So
I actually really like that. I like that, but I'm gonna go 2-2 just for the sake of not copying you.
yeah, I will. I think. Yeah, I think it will be an interesting game. Like I said, Drewsby Hall, Grealish, Beto. Everton's been doing okay so far. David Moyes is back there. It's doing his jobs. Yeah, it will be an interesting. I would love to see Everton pull an upset up there.
Absolutely.
Shop with
I 100% agree with you on that one. I mean, I hope your scoreline is right, but we'll see. We'll see. That concludes this week's pod from you and me. Another exciting week with every game seems like it's going to be an important and intense game. We'll see how we come out of this weekend.
Yes, sir. I'm excited to see them. Like you said, lots of fun and interesting games. And I should be able to catch every game this weekend because it looks like a clear weekend. So I'm excited for that. Let's hope Sunderland don't continue with what they've been doing and we keep it rocking from there, mate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, that's it from me and thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us on this week's pod.